Hello guys, a big welcome and thank you for joining me for this video. This is going to be a beginner's guide for making walking logic for mechs and robots within LittleBigPlanet. This particular video was recorded in LittleBigPlanet 3, although you can do this in LittleBigPlanet 2 as well. This is not an advanced lesson. This is a lesson on simply the walking logic and setting a pair of legs up to walk. And I'll break that down a little bit further in the video, and we'll make some logic from scratch for people to follow along. I just wanted to say thanks again for joining me for this, and I hope you watch to the end and enjoy. And as always, thank you for joining me. Anyway, here we go. So we're going to use an unfinished mech, actually, from I brought this over from LittleBigPlanet 2, believe it or not, and I still haven't got around to doing anything with it, so I thought I might as well use it as part of the basis for the tutorial. So first of all, you'll notice getting in and out of the mech has an animation of its own. We will touch upon this later on in the video, and this it's part of the nature of the logic setup anyway, but it's like a nice little byproduct almost. But there is ways to set this up specifically. So I'm just giving a demonstration on what we're going to learn how to do here today, which is basically just walking left and right, and you'll notice that it makes sense, the legs move accordingly. So this particular piece of logic that I have in mind that we're going to look at today will teach you how to do this. So yeah, we'll move on in a moment and get a more in-depth look. So let's take a little bit of a look at the guts and what makes this thing tick. So yeah, you'll notice a hell of a lot of microchips there. I'm just putting some anti-gravity on here so we can keep the mech suspended in the air. So don't worry too much about all of this. Again, this is a mech that I built in the past, and it has a few animations in place. But we're only going to be looking at two chips today, the leg positions and the walking chip. But I'm just going to cycle around the board here so you can see what kind of other features it does have. You'll notice jump animations, forwards jump, backwards jump. There's a little roar option there. That's always a nice little fun thing to add onto mechs. But again, this will be in a more advanced tutorial that I may do in the future if people want to learn. But yeah, well, let's for now just have a little look at the walking chip and the leg positions. So we're just going to primarily focus on these two today. So yeah, you'll notice straight away that you've got a timer kind of going a bit crazy there. We'll touch upon that, and you've got 4 OR gates there. So let's have a quick look at these two sequences. So basically the 3 sequences, sorry, the 2 that I opened first though, they are going to be the main driving force behind the walking animation itself. So you'll notice there's 2 batteries there, 4 batteries, excuse me, and they represent the hip and knee joints of the mech. So you've got a sequencer there with a gap at the end, and that's important as well. I'm just cycling through now the actual leg of the mech itself. So you'll notice that we're using wobble bolts here. We don't use motor bolts because we don't want it to go round and round. We want it to essentially rock back and forth. That's the basis of the animation. So I'm just showing here you know, the movements and how quick they move. And the batteries are actually hooked up to those OR gates over there, so the leg positions. So you'll see me here cycling backwards and forwards there, look. So you can see that's the hip joint, and then you'll see the knee joint, the backwards knee joint if you like. And then this controls the other leg. So yeah, they're all hooked up to those batteries, and again, as the video goes on, you'll see me do that. And like I mentioned before, towards the end of the video, we'll actually build a piece of logic together, so we can see that. So the sequences are actually set to speed. So if you just touch the we've used the left stick as well, by the way, to set this up. So if we just touch the left stick slightly, it will cycle through the animation a lot slower. You can see there, look, that depending on which way you push the stick, either left or right, it will follow that motion. So you can see there how that how that translates into the OR gates and makes sense within the way that the mech actually walks. So yeah, you can see there we've set it to speed scale. We've got the seconds per strip on 0.8. We'll touch upon that again later. Both the left and right leg are set to 0.8. And now we have a sequencer that's set to positional. Again, that'll become important as the video goes on, and I'll explain that more in depth, but I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of an overview of what we're looking at here. So the timer, that's quite important as well. That's set to give a constant reset in the sequences themselves, and I'll give a demonstration as well as the video goes on why that's important. But here you can see there, look, that the sequencer there, I've just took the reset off, and you can see that the sequence actually stops without resetting there. So that is the main reason why the constant reset is important, because it's set to speed. You don't actually have to have it set to speed. I like it set to speed though, because again, if you're pushing down on the left stick slightly, it will still animate. Here I'm just demonstrating what this NOT gate is for. It's that's what I was talking about at the very start of the video. When you jump into the mech, that NOT gate actually turns off, and as a result the legs position themselves the way that they do. So you can set that specifically. If you want to jump into the mech and it's and the legs are in a bit of a strange position, you can actually put set up a NOT gate, or whatever you like. NOT gate's pretty good for that kind of thing, and you can put it into a port into one of the OR gates that control the legs, and that's why there's so many inputs in the OR gates, because there's as many as little as you like. So that'll become more important with animations later on down the line in another tutorial that I might make. So here we're just having a quick look at the foot joint. So you'll notice that the foot is just it's hanging on with a basic bolt. It doesn't have a wobble bolt. That's because I discovered a long time ago, basically at the beginning of LittleBigPlanet 2, that you don't really need to have a third bolt there. A wobble bolt there for the foot joint. You can literally set it up with a bolt and use gyroscopes, and it will stay in that position no matter where the leg moves. Again, later on in the video we'll see that, but I'm just demonstrating here. If you actually move those gyroscopes around, the foot will sort of tip accordingly, because the gyroscope is literally used to keep things upright, or in whichever position you want to face it with. The reason there's so many is for this particular mech it needed quite a few to keep the position correct for walking. I don't know why, but it was kind of flapping around a little bit. You'll see that in a moment when I try and make the mech walk, but you can see there literally how it just kind of dangles there. And when you place the gyroscope down, it will fix it to that position. So again, that's one workaround that you can use. I used that for the rest of my mechs as soon as I discovered the technique in LittleBigPlanet 2. It's just so effective, and it saves so much time on having to make an extra joint to animate. It basically just does it itself. Now, you can still animate the feet, so you can have several different gyroscopes depending on if you want a jump animation and you want to twist the feet slightly. So it's quite effective. So you can use gyroscopes for the animation on a sequencer if you like, but again, that will be for a more sort of in-depth tutorial later on down the line if I decide to make one. If people like and appreciate this video, then and they want more, then of course I'll do that. But yeah, so this is just a little quick basic rundown of what we're looking at here. So yeah, like I say, we'll get to that more in depth as we go on. So all of that being said, let's move on now to just a couple of legs that I set up here for this video specifically. So you'll notice that they don't look like typical materials. Now, this is a technique I again picked up in LittleBigPlanet 2, how to make legs basically out of objects and decorations rather than materials, because you'll notice you can get a lot more interesting shapes. But again, we'll go on to that a little bit later. But yeah, so typically when setting up legs, I like to stay in the time range of around 2 seconds. And you'll see there that I hovered over the sync option. Now, that's important because if you change the sync back to 0, that I'm just about to demonstrate here, then both of the wobble bolts move at the same time. There's no difference in the time they take to sort of rotate respectively towards each other. So if you add sync in there, I usually go to about 0.6. That gives a nice smooth step. But if you don't have that during this process, then you can't really see effectively how it will look when it takes a step. So yeah, literally you want to set one leg up using this method, and then you can literally just copy this whole thing, and then you reverse the bolts on the other leg. So I'm about to demonstrate that here. So everything's set to the same, but this one's reversed now, or not reversed, whichever option it is. But you'll see there, look, that you literally get 1 step, 2 steps. So you've got there you have it. You've got a basic walking animation there. So yeah, it's easy for me to say because I've been doing this for a long time, but it's actually quite easy to do. You just have to place the bolts on the hip joint and then the knee joint, and then obviously you've got the wobble bolts, and then you've got, as I mentioned before, the bolt for the foot with a gyroscope on. And then it's just a case of animating a convincing step. So after this little breakdown, I'm actually going to set up a material pair of legs rather than a decoration and object one, just so that people can get a bit of a clearer look on what I'm talking about. So yeah, I've just demonstrated there how to attach both of the legs onto one piece of cardboard, or the cardboard is essentially acting as the anchor here, the body of the mech, if you like. So when you do this, it doesn't matter how precise you are, one of the legs is always going to be out of line, and it's usually the one that you're placing down. So what you do is you reverse the bolt again to match the rhythm of the other one, and then you just change the angle until you can see that it matches up again. You'll see that I just about get that in a moment. When you've done that, you just simply reverse the bolt again, and then you'll have your stepping animation. There we go. Let's just reverse it. Look, and there you go. So now both both legs are attached to the same piece of cardboard there. So yeah, it really is that simple. This process is quite fun actually. So anyway, moving on, I just wanted to show a quick demonstration of what it looks like to have more upright walking legs. So you'll see that those other legs are like a reverse knee joint. So I don't know, say like an animal or something like that. So you can have more human upright looking legs like this. If that's the kind of mech that you're after, it doesn't make any difference. You can use the logic in exactly the same way. It doesn't matter. So you see you've got a hip and a knee joint there. So yeah, pretty simple stuff. So anyway, let's move on now to we're actually going to borrow the logic from the original mech that I was messing around with here, just to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So these OR gates essentially act as the controls for the joints. So you'll see the one on the left there controls the hip, and then the one below that one controls the knee. And then you go to the right, and it's the same pattern. So you've got hip, knee, basically. It goes from the hip to the knee. And like I say, you can make as many or as little inputs into the OR gates as you like. So yeah, there we go. We've hooked them up now, and they've stopped moving. So this is where the logic takes over, but you'll notice that they're out of sync completely there. So we'll diagnose the problem in just a moment, and this is quite an important step as well. So let's get the walking chip into view so we can see what's going on here. So the bolts are still set to 2 on the timer, but the sequencer is set to 0.8, I believe. Yeah, we'll just quickly go on to the other mech. You can see that it's set to 0.6. So yeah, look, the time here is set to 0.8. So basically what's happening is the cycle animation on the chip is not giving the legs enough time to complete their animation. Like, the bolts are too slow. So what you want to do is you want the bolts to be quicker than the animation on the sequencers. Always. That's always a golden rule. So there you go. It can complete the step now. So you can have the mech's legs move as fast or as slow as you like, as long as the bolts are slightly faster than the sequencer, as I've just demonstrated there. Quite important if you want a smooth animation there. So now that the bolts are hooked up to the logic, you can kind of position them any way you want to, and they will work in the same pattern because of the nature of the batteries. But again, we'll get onto that. So I'm just actually positioning these now into more of a walk, like more of a stance when you hop into the mech. So you'll see when we stop there, and when you jump out, it resets. Look, so there's your stop-start, in-out animation. I just had to change a couple of bolts around. So let's have just a really quick look here at the more human-looking one. So you see, it looks relatively good, but it's probably a little bit too fast, actually. Although, again, you can sort of mess around with the timings on the bolts and slow them down and speed them up, which is actually what we're going to do here. So yeah, so it's set to 0.6, so let's actually slow them down just a little bit. And if we slow them down a little bit, you've got to remember that we have to change the timing on the sequencer to give the bolts time to sort of cycle through their animation. There's the bolts, although they are in control, but they're not. The logic is now sort of taking over control. So the logic is that the bolts are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to move at the time that you set them. So if we actually just take the sequencers and put them at 1 second, there you go. So we've got a bit more of a cleaner step. Again, I didn't really spend a massive amount of time setting up these human legs, so it's a bit of a weird gait, the way that they walk, but you kind of get the idea. Again, I just wanted to demonstrate that the logic works for pretty much any kind of leg type that you can come up with. So yeah, you hop out, and there you've got your sort of stance and your ready stance and your idle animation when you hop out of the mech as well. So I just wanted to sort of show that yeah, you can speed them up as well. The bolts can be set to kind of any sort of time, as long as they're quicker than the sequencer. So I've actually sped the bolts up there on the left mech to 0.4. So the bolts move really quickly, but they're still limited to how fast the sequencer controls the movement, the animation. It's just that the bolts can move a little bit faster. So here we have the three main components for these particular legs. So you've got the hip and thigh, sort of like the calf and the foot there. So you know, it's in three stages. So I'm just going to demonstrate here a very simple, basic material version, just to show that anybody can do this. It doesn't even have to be that glamorous. It's just literally to demonstrate how easy it is to set this kind of thing up. So just fashioning a very basic foot here, and hip and leg joint. So yeah, so this next step is quite important. So here, this is where the legs will actually attach to each other. So I've took a thin piece there and stuck it onto the lower leg, and I'm going to do the same thing with the foot joint here. So we've got a piece for the lower leg and a piece for the foot. So the hip stays free; that doesn't have any additional pieces of material stuck to it. So I'm just going to really crudely kind of put them in place here. So you can kind of see where this is going. So the hip joint will you'll have a wobble bolt attached to right at the top of the hip, and then the next wobble bolt is actually attached from the lower leg onto the hip with this smaller piece, this thin piece of cardboard. And the normal bolt, it's the same idea with the foot. So let's just change the material here to something a bit stronger, and this is also important as well. The materials do make a difference, by the way. So generally, you know, metal's always going to be stronger than cardboard, although we can use cardboard to just sort of get a basic animation down. Eventually you're going to want to sort of change your legs to a lot stronger material. So metal, for instance, is probably, you know, the perfect material to use, really. So it's heavy, you know, it's heavy duty. It actually strengthens the legs overall. And again, when we move on to sort of hooking the bolts up here, we'll see that. So yeah, there we go. So that sort of square chunk of metal is acting again as the body, and yeah, you can see there now that the excuse me, my phone just went off. You can see there that I've actually attached the knee, the lower leg to the hip with a wobble bolt on that thin piece, and we'll do the same thing here with a normal bolt, just attaching the foot joint. So again, this is very, very crude. I'm not really spending a great deal of time on this. You know, if you're going to design this sort of thing, you can take your time with this. But yeah, so I'm just going to show here. We'll pinch this microchip that I've used for the other foot and place it on here. Let's get rid of that opacity tweaker. So the important part here is the gyroscope more than anything else, really. The material tweaker, we just want to set everything to indestructible because, again, we want to give the mech a fighting chance at, you know, sort of not breaking while we're doing this this process. Although, you know, sometimes if you over rotate the bolts, that it can pop the joint because the bolts themselves can break. So we've just set the wobble bolts to a timer of 2. So here we go. You can see how they were sort of struggling a bit there. That's because it was cardboard material. So I've just set the hip there to metal, so it's a hell of a lot stronger now. You can see smoother, stronger. So we take the pause off and we'll add the sync in a moment. Here we go. So let's put it to 0.6 again. So yeah, already you can see that we've got the basic step. That is a perfectly good stepping animation there, but we'll adjust it a little bit more just to give it a bit of a wider gate. I'm just going to adjust the angle a little bit here and there just to try and get the step a little bit more effective. So, and you'll see that I'll actually change the range of motion as well to give a bigger step. Just in a moment. Here we go. Look. So sorry, the rotation. There we go. So let's give it a bit more rotation to work with. Yep, there you go. So you can already see a bigger, more effective step straight away. And that's the kind of thing you're looking for. So yeah, here we are. We've just about got it now. So we'll do the same trick as before. We'll just literally we'll just copy the leg, reverse the bolts, and there you have it. We'll have a step animation for 2 legs. So again, pretty simple stuff, and you know, you can design some quite sort of miraculous sort of designs with materials and stuff. But I like using the decorations and the objects. It's just become a habit now. I find that you can make a lot more interesting shapes, and yeah, I just really enjoy using that technique. But materials is a lot of fun as well. It's just, it takes quite a long time to come up with some really intricate and interesting leg designs. So yeah, just demonstrating here, look, I've got that same problem of when you place a joint. So if you reverse the bolt, you can see that it now matches the step. So if you just move the angle until we get the right angle in sync with the other one, and then we just reverse the bolt again. So yeah, pretty simple stuff at this stage. So this is always the stage that you want to start at first. You want to design your leg, get the step animation down, and then move on to the logic. You know, sort of deal with the hardware first before you deal with the software, basically. And yeah, it's really that easy. And you can see there how the foot on the basic bolt works. It just becomes its own animation. Essentially, you don't have to set up another wobble bolt. I mean, you can do if you want to, but yeah, I mean, I've built things like Metal Gear Rex in the past, and it uses exactly the same thing, and that's a big mech, you know, heavy, and yeah, it works perfectly fine. So yeah, let's just break down one of the other legs here, so you can see that what I did with the joints in this one. So you'll see them, but this is where the opacity tweaker comes into effect. So I've actually made the pieces of metal invisible when you put it into preview mode, but it's exactly the same process, same thing. And again, when we go into eventually, when I go into eventually moving on to a more advanced tutorial, I'll actually show people how to design a decoration and object mech as well, because there is a couple of little tricks for it. Yeah, I just find them so much cooler than material, but it doesn't really matter. It's the same process. You know, 3 pieces there, just to keep it simple. I mean, like I say, you can add other attachments and stuff, but the more you add, the more complex it gets. So yeah, I'm just basically sort of deleting a few of the decorations here to show sort of what it is we're looking at here, and move over to the original mech as well and do the same thing, just to show how much of it actually is decorations. So yeah, quite a lot of mech design and mech sort of making in this way is a lot of smoke and mirrors. You know, you've got your 3 basic bits for the legs, the hip, the knee, and the foot, basically, is how I always describe it. But yeah, a lot of these decorations and bits and bobs are just there for interesting shapes, you know. So you can see it's just a bunch of batteries and what are they called, lasers that are actually kind of sort of pushed together to make the shape of the leg, and then I added decorations and whatnot. And you can see that most of the body and the head are decorations as well. But again, in another sort of more advanced tutorial, I'll teach people how to design something like this. It's good fun. It's really good fun. You can see there, look, without any of the decorations on, how silly it actually looks. But you know, again, this is part of the beauty of LittleBigPlanet. You know, it's you can sort of be as obvious or you know, obscure as you like. And these mechs are kind of fun in a way, because they you know, they confuse people on how they're made. So yeah, because this was made in LittleBigPlanet 2, you'll notice that those pieces are actually invisible. There is a glitch on how to do that, but we're not going to get into that in this video. I just wanted to show this, again, the 3 basic parts. Alright, with all that being said, let's move on to making our own little piece of logic here for anybody that wants to follow along. So you can see that I've set 2 chips up there, walking chip and leg positions chip. We've got 2 sequencers with 2 batteries on, and they're set to 2.5 seconds per strip. The position of the batteries themselves is important, but we'll speak about that in just a moment. And you can see that the bolts are set to 2, as I mentioned before. So the OR gates, again, they represent the joints. So you've got the hip and the knee. So we use the ones on the left for the leg in the foreground, and we use the ones on the right for the leg in the background. So the batteries, they hook up to they hook up to the OR gates, and again, I'll set that up in just a moment. So the battery's placement is important, because you'll see that they overlap slightly. So that is to have kind of like a nice clean motion when the legs move. you'll see me keep sort of hopping over to the other mech just to reference. It's actually been a little bit of it's been a bit of a long time since I've actually built any sort of walking logic, so I was using this as a little bit of a reference, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, you can see there I'm just demonstrating the overlap, why they overlap, and that gap at the end, that just gives the that little gap that at the end of the sequencer there just gives the it's like it's almost like having another battery in a way, but nothing is sort of activated at that point, so the legs return to their original position. So that's part of the walking sequence. So you've kind of got on, and then the first battery goes off, and then the battery that's just after that goes off. So it's on, off, on. There, you see that? On, and then if it keeps going off, on, off. So there you go. So you kind of get 4 movements in a way from that. So there's 2 sequences to represent the 2 legs, and yeah, I'm just going to hook them up. So typically how I set it up is I have the knee joints move before the hip joints, sort of to get the feet moving first, because otherwise if you move the hip first, then the knee is kind of it's rigid and in place before the mech moves, and you know, you don't get a bend in the knee until sort of afterwards, which is not what you want. You kind of want the knees to bend first and then the hip, and then when you speed the animation up, it looks more fluid. So I'm just actually setting up the positional sequencer here, and we'll explain why this is important. This is mostly for that constant reset that I mentioned earlier. So positional allows you to have, if you set the sequencer really small, just enough space for the battery to fit, it doesn't matter how lightly you touch on we're using the left stick for this tutorial, so left controls the movement of the mech. So it doesn't matter how lightly you press down on that stick, it will sense it. So what we're after is that constant reset. We want that to turn off immediately as you start walking. Otherwise, I didn't actually demonstrate it in this video, but if I was to take that off, the timer doesn't turn off. It keeps sort of going crazy like it's going, and you don't get a clean animation. It's like it's very jittery. It's sort of like, because it's still constantly trying to reset the sequences. So you got to make sure you turn that off. So we'll turn the we'll set up the timer here, and you just plug it into itself basically. So you plug the timer into its own reset port, and you'll see in just a second when I unpause that it will constantly reset itself like that. So the only thing that we need to do now is have an on-off feature for it, and we'll have that in the form of a not gate. So when you're not moving, even when you're out of the mech, this thing will be sort of constantly resetting, but we'll set it up in a moment so that when you jump into the mech, and as soon as you move the left stick, that the not gate will turn off, and in turn that will turn the reset off. So you'll see that in just a moment. I'll hook that up and get a little sense of that. I think I was just having a little bit of trouble here at the time. Yeah, so here we're gonna use an OR gate there and plug that into the NOT gate. So we'll use the positional sequencer like I've just mentioned, and we'll have the left stick plugged into the OR gate, and also it will activate the sequencers as well. So the reason that you plug the left right into the OR gate that turns off the NOT gate as well, it's like a backup. So you'll notice that you have to push down a little bit harder on the left stick to get that to light up, but you just press very, very lightly on the left stick for the positional sequencer to activate. So both of them are just there to turn off the constant reset. It's like a little bit of a backup, but like I say, you could probably get away with it just with the constant reset. The positional sequencer in place. Okay, so there we go. We've got a little bit of a basic walk going on. You can see that it's very slow, but because the bolts are quicker than the sequencer's cycle, it gets to complete its animation. So the sequencer, the logic has taken over at this point, but the logic that's there to control the bolts. The bolts will only move now when you press the left stick, but again, if you have the bolts slower than the sequencer, then they won't have enough time to rotate fully, so the animation will look slightly off. So they kind of work together. You know, you always want to have the bolts slightly faster than the sequencers for that reason, because if they don't get to complete their rotation, then the animation will look off. You know, the bolts they won't get enough time to complete their animation essentially. Okay, so here I'm just put down another NOT gate. So you'll notice when you hop in and out of the mech, it lights on and off. So I'm actually just testing out here what I want it to look like in an idle animation, so when you hop out of the mech. So you can do that just by messing around with the OR gates there. So the NOT gate is active at the moment, so we'll plug it in like that, and you can see that because the OR gates in the foreground, representing the leg in the foreground, are switched on. When you jump into the mech, the NOT gate turns off. So there you are. And again, when you hop into the mech, if the legs aren't in a position that look like a ready stance or something like that, you can use the same technique just in reverse. So when you hop into the mech, you can have a NOT gate that's switched on, and it can do the same thing. And when you press the left stick, you can have the positional sequencer hooked up to that NOT gate, or hooked up to a chip that contains the NOT gate to turn it off when you actually do walk. Because you've got to remember that, again, this will be for a bit more of an advanced lesson, but it's important that whenever the mech is walking, that you need to keep that animation free of any other inputs that might be going into the OR gates. But again, that's a little bit more of a complex lesson, so we'll just focus on the walking for here. So you'll just see that I'm actually speeding up the animation now a little bit. There we go. So the bolts, I've just missed that, I think they're set to 0.8. But they will be slightly faster than the sequencers. So there we go, nice and smooth. And you can see that the constant reset, as soon as you press down on that left stick, it stops moving. There we are. And then as soon as you let go, it continues to move. And as soon as you let go as well, the legs are in that ready position. So yeah, it's quite simple stuff there. But I'm actually just going to change the body of the mech now to be metal. So again, that improves the overall strength of the mech itself. Also, when you're making a mech, depending on how big the legs are, that can also determine the strength as well. I'm just demonstrating here what we've kind of got so far. So you'll see that it's a bit lopsided, a bit unstable, completely unstable actually. Let's be honest about it. So I'm actually going to show how simple it is to rectify this issue. So again, that block in the middle is representing the body of our mech right now. And to be honest, looking back at the video, it probably is a little bit too heavy for these legs. There are sort of like tweaks and tricks you can do for that. But yeah, you've got to bear in mind that when you're making a mech, where the hips join onto the mech's body, you can have, say if you want to build something that's quite big, you can have a small metal part embedded into the mech's body, and then have the rest of the mech like wooden or cardboard, so it's a bit lighter overall. I know there is tweakers within LittleBigPlanet 3 where you can adjust the weight, but I kind of like doing it sort of a bit more of a natural way. So yeah, so I've just paused the video there while the mech is in an active position, and you can drop the mech to the floor here so that it lands on its feet, and you kind of get where its natural stance is going to be. So And you'll see me placing a chip down here, and I'll put a gyroscope exactly where this position is. So once we do this, we know that that is the angle that it will sit at when it's standing on its own 2 feet. So you can kind of use the robot's stance to your advantage here. So I hopped into the mech, got it into its ready stance, and then let it drop to the floor, and then paused. So you can see that the block is just slightly on a bit of a slant there. It's not like dead straight, which is fine, because like I say, we can put the gyroscope down now, and you see that it doesn't sort of flop around anymore. It's stuck in that position. So yeah, and the legs themselves at this very moment, they're just operating on their own power. There's no sort of movers or anything assisting it right now. So you can kind of get a feel of how strong the legs actually are just from doing this. It's all part of the testing process, and it's actually quite a fun process. You know, before you really get into sort of editing the mech. But yeah, just demonstrating here how much of a difference that the material you pick for the body does make a big difference on the overall strength of the mech. So the legs are actually heavier than the body is, because remember it's got metal attached to it. Metal is one of the integral parts of the legs design. Remember, so that you want strong joints. So yeah, that's why we've picked metal as the body. But again, when I do a more advanced tutorial, I can go into that a bit more. Just for now, we just want to kind of get something basic down. So I'm actually going to put a couple of movers onto this now, and also a direction splitter. So we'll put the direction splitter down, and again, we're just going to use the left stick as an input for this. So we're going to have it splits the left and right direction into 2 directions with the direction splitter, hence the name. It's pretty obvious. So what we're going to have is 2 movers, one that assists moving left, one that assists moving right. So part of the animation process is trying to, if you want to, trying to make the mech look a bit more natural with its walk. So it's really obvious if you've got a mech that's just powered along by movers. So I kind of try and find that balance where you don't want to go too fast, you don't want to go too slow, you want to try and find that sort of middle ground, if you like. And also when it takes a step, you don't want to sort of have. You'll see in a moment that I'll actually put a gravity tweaker on, and I'll also set the movers to push down slightly as the mech walks. That's because you get a natural sort of upwards thrust from when the mech takes a step. The legs are using their own power to sort of push up and along. So you don't want that to go too crazy. So yeah, you can see that it's just sort of being assisted along a little bit right now. It's a little bit bouncy at the moment, but it's being assisted along by these movers. So we'll turn them up slightly, respectively left and right. So we'll go to about 10, see what that looks like, 10 or 11, whatever. Yeah, quite a bit of a jump in speed there. But you can already see the sort of beginnings of, what we're going after here. So let's just turn them down a little bit and adjust them. And we'll put a little bit of anti-grav on here, and a little bit of dampening as well. So that'll naturally sort of slow it down a little bit, stop it sort of bouncing so much. But also, you'll see me tweak the movers as well to push down a little bit. You can see it's kind of still a bit floaty there, and that's a result of the legs generating force pushing down into the floor. So yeah, let's put a bit of dampening on there and see what that looks like. Yeah, so not bad. Still a little bit floaty, but it's sort of getting there. So this is kind of like the not so glamorous part of sort of mech building and mech making. You have to tweak quite a lot. So every mech that you make is going to be a bit different, because the legs might be slightly longer, the body might be slightly heavier. So we're going to just adjust the up-down speed here. So there we go. So we've got a little bit of bounce on the forwards walk and a little bit of bounce on the backwards walk. You can see that. So it still kind of looks natural, but it's not going too crazy. So it's all about tweaking, basically, tweaking it to a point and until you're happy with what you see. So you see, I actually had it a little bit better before, but I was just sort of tinkering around at this point, messing about, seeing what I could, what effects I could get. But yeah, so it is possible to do this through sort of gravity and movers, and in my opinion, I like that forwards walk there is really nice. I like a little bit of bounce to the walk because it looks natural. So if it was just walking along and the mover was doing all the work, the legs are kind of just there for show at that point. So yeah, I do like the legs to kind of do half of the work, should we say, and the movers, they just kind of help propel it forwards. But also, again, you want to try and keep that sort of slightly natural bounce because you want it to, you want it to be a physical thing. It's physically there. It's not all just logic controlling everything. I've just put down another anti-grav tweak here, so you've got two different sort of levels of dampening and anti-gravity on this thing. So I'm just trying to smooth out the animation a little bit. I don't think actually looking back I fully get it, but it just kind of demonstrates to people sort of what you're at, what sort of thing that we're looking for here. You want it to look smooth, but you want it to look sort of natural as well. So we'll just take that control now to hop in and have a quick look, see what we've got. But yeah, that's quite a good animation actually. You got a little bit of bounce there. Really quite nice. The backwards one needs more work, but it's on its way. There we go. It's kind of gets into a bit of a rhythm there. But yeah, that's the kind of thing we're going for. So the legs on this one are actually quite strong. So they were generating quite a bit of upwards force. But again, that's just part of the nature of mech building. They're all different. But yeah, I'm actually quite happy with how that's turned out. So yeah, that's the kind of thing that you want to go for, in my opinion. So anyway, that concludes the basic tutorial on sort of how to set up a pair of legs to walk and some basic logic. I hope this helped anybody that is interested in mech building. I remember back in the day on LittleBigPlanet 2, there was a lot of people in the community, in the mech building community, should I say, and we all shared ideas. And I don't really want to take the credit for this, but I can't remember anybody coming up with that foot joint idea before me. Actually, I think I might have been the one to sort of popularise it in the mech community. Other people probably came out with it at the same time that I didn't know of, but it's all relative. But yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for stopping by, and I really hope people enjoyed the video. And of course, if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them, but hopefully I can answer some questions in future tutorials, and I will be doing a tutorial on how to build a decoration and object mech from scratch. But yeah, just hope everybody enjoyed. As always, thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and look out for more in the future. Anyway, bye.